You're listening to the Today's Family Lawyer podcast, the leading source of daily news and insight for family law practitioners in England and Wales. Sign up to our free weekly newsletter at todaysfamilylawyer.co.uk and subscribe to hear all the latest news and views from across the family law sector. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello and welcome along to the latest Today's Family Lawyer podcast. Today I'm talking about what clients want. Wouldn't we all like to know that? It's a new report from the Law Firm Marketing Club, the fourth year of this report, and I'm chatting about its contents with Clare, who is a legal marketing consultant and founder of the Law Firm Marketing Club. Thank you very much indeed for joining the podcast, Clare.
Thanks very much, David, and thank you for inviting me to be here.
We'd all like to know what clients want. This is a report that you've been running for a few years now. In the first instance, tell me a little bit about yourself, what you do. I know you've been on the podcast before, Claire, so you're familiar to a few of our listeners. Tell us about what you do and what the report is about.
Thanks, David. So, my background is I used to be a marketing director in a couple of different regional law firms. For the last 7 years, I've been a marketing consultant. And really simply, I help law firms to do better marketing. I'm talking about the strategic stuff, helping them have a clear direction, helping them have a clear set of goals, and then putting the right things in place to make it happen. And as part of that, 3 years ago, I founded the Law Firm Marketing Club, which is a membership organisation. We run webinars, podcasts, we deliver research, and we're going to talk about what clients want research today. We also do other research. We have collaboration get-togethers, etc. We provide lots of resources. So I like to think I'm a bit of an enabler to help people in the legal sector to get better results from their marketing and better value from their marketing.
But it should be said at the outset that what clients want is about marketing rather than legal expertise. We rather take legal expertise for granted.
Yeah. The focus of this is let's listen to the client's voice. Let's understand how they're choosing their law firms, what they're expecting from their law firms, what their experiences are when they're dealing with law firms. And let's ask a bunch of questions around that and share the results. And we take it a little bit further. We share the data, we share the results, we compare it year on year, but we also give an opinion on what it all means, which I think is really valuable, because sometimes you get thrown data and you look at it and you think that's great. What the hell do I do with that?
Marketing isn't something that law firms are traditionally strong at, although I think the last time we were chatting, you were indicating that there's definitely some progress there.
Oh, without a doubt. Look, historically, it wasn't a strength. But to be fair, law firms haven't been able to market themselves for that long in the big scheme of things. So, we've got to be fair about this. But the role of the marketer in a law firm has definitely gained momentum and status in recent years in particular. I think the pandemic has highlighted the importance of having a very clear strategic approach to how you show up, where you show up, how you engage with clients, and how you empower and bring all your lawyers along in that journey, because it's not just the marketer's job to market the firm. So I think that's changed. And in fact, speaking to marketers in recent weeks, the roles they've now got in their firms are definitely more important, more strategic, and they're being listened to more. So it's definitely changed, David.
So tell us about what clients want 2023, the fourth year of the report. In the first instance, tell us about the practicalities of how you're collating this information. I know you're going to share some stats and some insight, but where do you start with this report?
Okay, so we've done it for 4 years, as you said. It's an online piece of research. We buy our responses, so it's an online survey. We always make sure we get at least 600 responses each year. This year it's 668 to be precise. And it's respondees from across the UK. We're very careful about trying to have a balance of the demographics so that we can understand the different perspectives of different client types. So, for example, we make sure we've got a similar mix of ages, similar mix of, or balanced mix of ages, balanced mix of male, female. We also specifically look for people that have used a law firm in the last year, have used a law firm more than 12 months ago and more than 5 years ago. But we also want people who've never used a law firm, because some of our questions are around how do you choose your law firm? Where do you look? What are you expecting to find and see? And we also then want to know what different client types have got to say. So by that I mean personal matters versus business clients versus a mix of both. And the data we've got, clearly the headlines jump off the page, but we can drill down into all those different demographics and understand how a business client views something compared to an individual client, how a person who's over 60 years old looks at something compared to somebody who's under 30 years old. And I think that's where the data really comes to the fore. The headlines themselves are really important, but the nuances, when we dig a little deeper and look at the context of things, becomes ever so important.
We often talk about legal services, particularly personal legal services, being distress purchases. Is that something that comes out of the research?
It does. So in the past, we've asked about the emotions that clients have when they are engaging a law firm, and it's a question we ask every other year. We didn't ask it this year because we asked it last year, but it absolutely comes to the fore. And distress is one word. It can also be excitement and happiness. Look at buying a house. That's the classic example of, it's super exciting, but it's also super stressful in a nutshell. And those are two strong emotions. And clearly, if those are the strong emotions that somebody's coming to a law firm with when they're engaging them, then it's really important that law firms understand that and understand how that makes them feel. So whilst we don't have that data this year, we've got that from previous years to understand the different way clients feel.
We've probably beat around the bush enough now in terms of the context of the report. Claire, tell us about the findings. What are the key things that have come out of the report in 2023? And then we can drill into those in a little bit of detail as well.
Okay, so I'm going to try not to throw too many numbers at you, David, because there are an awful lot of them in the report. And by the way, any of your listeners are welcome to grab themselves a copy of the summary report. They can do that via our website. But the questions we asked are around the experience of using law firms, onboarding experience, which was a new question we asked this year, how they choose a law firm and what's important to them, including their approach to sustainability. We asked about first impressions. We asked about value, experience, and how law firms did, and fundamentally what they expect from a law firm. So lots and lots of questions. Some of them we've asked for a number of years, so 4 years, so we can compare those results. Some are new questions. And one of the new questions, which we added at the request of our law firm marketing club members, was to inquire of people if they've used a law firm more often than once, whether they've used the same law firm. And interestingly on that one, so 47% of our respondents had only instructed a law firm once. So that means 53% more than once. Of those 53%, 41% had gone to different law firms, which is a massive number. And for me, something that law firms need to take note of, which is actually when clients need legal services, why aren't they coming back to who they used before? And it breaks down to 5 key areas: change of location, recommendations, the ineffectiveness of the first law firm, sale of the first law firm, and different needs. Now, for me, actually, none of those are really great reasons for a law firm, because you can overcome pretty well any of those. Sale of first law firm, well, surely that became part of another law firm. And if we're keeping in touch with clients, they should still know where we are. Different needs, well, most law firms offer a variety of legal services. Are they telling clients? Change of location, increasingly law firms work across different regions. Recommendations, well, if you're doing the job right, then you're going to keep being recommended. And ineffectiveness, well, there's no excuse for that. So it's an interesting one. And first time we've asked that question, we'll be keeping an eye on that in future years. So 41% of people are going to a different law firm. So law firms, think about that. Think about how you're keeping in touch with your clients to let them know all the ways you can help them.
Wow.
The other one And I'm going to rattle through a couple here for you quickly, David. Interrupt me at any point if you want to dig deeper or whatever. So first impressions is a question we've asked a few times, and it fundamentally is, tell us what your first impression was. Was it brilliant or good, or was it awful, and anything in between? And this year, 53% of law firms are making a brilliant or good first impression, which is slightly up on last year, but it's still only 53%. So, almost half of clients are not getting a good first impression.
When you drill into that, and in particular, you've got this proliferation of technology that's now enabling a better onboarding experience. Is that something that you're able to drill into?
Yeah, it is. It is. So generally speaking, the kind of met in-person phone call, walked into an office, the in-person experience was better. And we have drilled down into this in the report in detail. If I give you some figures to give you an indication of the differences by our different age ranges, it's starting to allude to another area. So generally speaking, we're starting to see the beginnings of very different expectations by our under 30s and our over 60s. So our future clients versus our today clients, if you like. And if I look at website forms, 64% of our under 30s said, actually, I got a brilliant or good first impression if I submitted a web form. And that compares to 33% of our over 60s, which is an enormous gap. And the digital channels, if I look at website chat, if I look at messaging via social media channels, you've got similar numbers. 59% of under 30s said they got a brilliant or good first impression if they contacted the firm using social media channels, 12% of over 60s. So it's some massive, massive differences. And some of this is just what we're growing up with. The older generation are less tech savvy, younger generation more so. I've got some numbers I can share with you later about how the first point of contact from an under 30-year-old is less likely to be on the phone than for an over 60-year-old. And law firms are basically geared up for how we've always done business in the past. So we're pretty good generally now at doing when you walk into my office, when you phone me. Still areas for improvement, as this data is showing you, but we're not necessarily gearing up for those other points of entry, which are increasingly important. So somebody sending a web form, somebody using online chat on a website, somebody even emailing rather than phoning, and using social media. So it's the beginnings of one of the big findings, David, which is we're calling it the generation gap. Every bit of this report shows some massive, massive differences in expectations and requirements for our different age groups. And I think that is one of the biggest findings in this report that law firms really need to take note of and think about what strategy they have for the generations. And it's not about changing your business model. I'm not sitting here saying you've got to change everything and do everything differently. You don't. Your clients today are your clients today. Hopefully you're getting feedback from them. Hopefully you're looking after them reasonably well, very well. But what you need to do is think about what's coming. What you need to do is understand that the generation coming along has experienced stuff in a different way, has grown up in a world where you have immediacy. Amazon, for example, we're so used to being able to go onto Amazon, buy something today and it be delivered tomorrow, even later today if you're in some of the bigger cities. And whilst I'm not comparing law firms with Amazon, I am saying that's what they're used to. That's what they're used to experiencing. They know that technology is there to enable businesses to deliver better. And law firms need to work out their version of deliver better whilst remaining true to their sort of underlying principles and business model.
Is that expectation one of speed? Is it experience and expertise for that younger generation? Have you been able to drill into what beyond the onboarding process, what they're really looking for?
Yeah, so I'm going to jump ahead to one of the questions we asked them around their experience of dealing with a law firm and delivering to their expectations. And We asked about service price, overall value, delivering a good outcome, responsiveness, communications, and the experience versus expectations. So not specifically speed, but service came out at 76% in terms of being, rated highly in terms of their experience and what they wanted. The feedback we get, it's a really interesting one, David, because we've got quite contrasting feedback depending on who you ask. So I'm just going to pull out a quote just to highlight this. In choosing a law firm, we've got one person, what's important to you? I've got one person saying, I want to deal with them in person or on the phone, not online. Okay, that's clear cut. And then I've got somebody else saying, all in all, much prefer handling communication through technology. So the challenge I think law firms have is not as simple as being speedier. It's about having a consistent service around the quality, the speed, the effectiveness, the value that will be viewed differently by different clients. And I know that's not very helpful, but that's what this research is highlighting. To kind of look at your question from another perspective, what's really important to clients when they're choosing a law firm, it's still recommendations come up high on the list. So this year, the figure's 75% of people are saying recommendations from a professional are vital or preferable, being able to meet them in person, 79%, being close to where they live or work, 77%. So it's quite interesting, that proximity piece. I know most law firms still work in particular regions, but some are trying to expand, but that proximity piece is still important. Recommendations from family or friends, 72%. And funnily enough, down at the bottom, being active on social media, if I look at the headline figure, then only 38% of all our respondees are saying that's vital or important. But if I look at that by age groups, 66% of our under 30s are saying being active on social media is really important in how they choose their law firm, compared to 18% of our over 60s. Long-winded answer. I'm not sure I did actually answer your question, David, but I think what the data's telling us is that there's lots of different factors in here. And for me, one of the big conclusions is set out your stall, be very clear about what you are, what you offer, how you offer it, what they should expect from you, and you'll attract the sort of clients that is relevant and appealing to. But don't try and be all things to all men, because the requirements that people have are very different. 24/7 access. So we specifically asked a question about access to people at weekends and in the evening, and how often they wanted updates on matters. So ability to speak to someone 24/7, 64% of people said that was vital or preferable, which is a massive number.
Yeah.
At least weekly updates about my matter, 83%, same day response, 85%. So speed's absolutely important in what people want. Access to my lawyer in the evening and at weekends, an interesting one, 53%. So, there's some interesting data here. And in the report, we compare that data over the 4 years, because there's definitely some shifts. And it's the access to my lawyer in the evening at weekends. In 2020, the first year we asked it, 35% said that was important. It's now 53%. So it's a bit of it kind of throws you kind of go, oh my word. And again, this isn't about saying lawyers, you need to be available 24/7. It's about finding a way to be accessible to clients 24/7, which, there's technology and there's outsourced providers that can help firms with this. The point is, make sure you're able to be there when the client needs you.
Well, you've taken the words right out of my mouth, which is there a preference for how that communication is delivered back? So is it an app, or is it an email, or is it a phone call, or is it a meeting in the office?
It's a mixture of things. They definitely want to have direct dealings with lawyers and direct contact details of lawyers and support staff. So they're expecting that. They're wanting regular updates. Online accounts, 79% of people said that would be vital or preferable, so clearly important. Meetings at a place of their choice, as opposed to necessarily having to go to the lawyer's office, 67%. Online chat is growing in importance. So lots of indicators there in terms of what's important and how clients want to deal with their lawyers. But again, and I'm not going to go into all of this because I've already made the point a little bit, there are massive differences if I give you those numbers by different age groups and by different client types. I urge people to grab a copy of the data because, listening in this podcast, they're probably already overwhelmed by some of the numbers I've thrown at them. You possibly are, David, and I make no apologies because that's the downside of data is you have a lot of it. But the upside is when you can spend time to actually sit and read it and consider what it means, it quite quickly becomes apparent where you need to focus your attention.
I want to ask you about whether we take some of this with a pinch of salt, because we're asking clients what they want against what's reasonable in inverted commas.
Yeah.
I also want to ask about investment and the fact that this is all going to cost, and therefore we need to think about pricing quite carefully.
Firms are pretty good these days at asking clients how they did. So post-matter feedback and assessment and are getting better at then not just asking, but taking it on board and doing something with it. What we try to do with this research is ask the question before that, which is when you're choosing a law firm, what's important to you and how do you go about it? Having chosen a law firm and dealing with them, how are they doing and where could it be improved? And what are you expecting? So I think what this research does is it enables law firms to understand what's important to clients, what matters to them, and to then apply that to their business model. So it goes back to what I said earlier. This data is not about saying you need to change everything you do. It's about looking at it, understanding it, and saying, how does that fit in our business model? What do we need to think about? What do we need to do differently? For example, you've got many firms that are very well established in their communities. Most of their work comes from referrals, recommendations, repeat clients, and they don't need to work too hard about generating new clients. So do they need to focus on the bit that says, the under 30s are using Google to find their new law firm? Maybe not right now, but they need to be mindful of it because at some point those under 30s are going to be the clients they want to have. So it's about being aware and starting to think about what do we do about that piece of information. But that law firm I've just described absolutely needs to look at what's important from clients when they're dealing with a law firm, how they want to be communicated with. Again, our over 60s, they're quite happy getting a phone call or a letter or even an email. Whereas our under 30s are saying, I don't want you phoning me. I don't want you necessarily sending me letters in the post. In fact, I think that's wasteful and expensive. And surely you're charging me too much to do that. They want to be communicated in different ways. So it's certainly not about saying to law firms, change everything. It's about saying to law firms, be aware and start planning and work it into your business plan.
I think one of the interesting things that comes out of the research for me is this change in attitude towards ethics, sustainability, not legal ethics, but actually the ethics of a business and the payback that business perhaps has in the local community.
Yeah.
Can you drill into that a touch?
Yeah. So we asked very specifically in choosing a law firm, how important is a firm's approach to sustainability? And it's the second year that we've asked the question. And 39% of our respondents said it was either very important or important to them in choosing a law firm. And that's slightly up from last year. It was 37% last year. So not a big change, but a slight change. So at a simple level, you could kind of go, okay, well, it's just over a third of people are saying that really, really matters. Is it something we need to worry about too much? And I need to drill a bit deeper to sort of explain why it really matters. And I'm going to use two examples here. So business clients compared to individual clients. 55% of our business client respondees said it's very important or important. And we know that increasingly businesses have a procurement process that requires them to tick certain boxes, make sure certain things are in place. It's due diligence, if you like. And sustainability and having an ethical approach to how you conduct your business is part of that in many cases. So 55% today of businesses say that's very important. And then if I look at my age differences, so my under 30s, 55% of them are saying that's an important factor that will help me choose which law firm I engage, compared to only 29% of our 60 plus year olds. So the data doesn't lie. It's a growing area of importance to people who want to do the right thing or be seen to be doing the right thing. And again, this is not about law firms suddenly having to spend a fortune and change the whole way they conduct their business. Most firms are already intuitively doing quite a few things that could be considered good ESG contributors, whether it's the reduced traveling, whether it's how they energize their offices, whether it's they're going paperless, etc., etc. There's lots of things, and those are just the basic things. But are they talking about it? Are they sharing that information? Are they supporting others in their communities that are working hard on an ESG agenda and talking about it in their PR, in their social media? So there's some quick wins here where this is important to clients. Actually, we're doing some stuff, but we're not necessarily communicating it. We've not necessarily got a page on our website. We're not necessarily doing anything on social media. Well, let's start doing something on social media. And in the meantime, let's think about what we need to be doing longer term, because it ain't going to go away. Sustainability at the moment is a differentiator. So those who choose to potentially take this path to differentiate themselves from others in their communities, it's a massive opportunity. But give it a couple of years, it'll just be a hygiene factor. It will just be expected. So law firms can't afford to get left behind on it.
We're fast moving towards the end of the time that we have for the podcast, and it's very clear that we're not going to cover everything that this report has got to offer. So I'm not being paid to say this, but I would urge people to have a read of it. I just want to sort of finish on a point around pricing and investment, because I know you're saying firms don't have to change a huge amount of what they do, but there is a time and cost to some of this stuff. Firms need to really think about what's important to them and then start looking at what their pricing strategy is as a result, surely.
When I say they don't need to, well, I'm not sure I did say they don't need to change stuff, just to take your words. They do need to change, but they need to divert as opposed to do something totally new on top of everything they're doing. So everyone's already busy. Most firms are performing pretty well at the moment. You know, the market is reasonable in the legal sector. What they need to do is strategize to be ready for what's coming and divert as opposed to add on to their existing workload, so that they are taking into account changing needs of the different generations, the importance of sustainability, simple things like pick up the phone and phone your own firm and see how quickly the phone's answered and what that first impression is like. And it's not about catching people out. It's about actually knowing and understanding the experience their client has. Does that have an impact on pricing? Of course it does, because if your strategy is then, right, we're going to invest in more technology to help us with some of these things, we're going to invest in more skills and resources and people and supporting them to make sure we deliver a better experience for clients. Yeah, of course, all of that has a cost, and that needs to then be factored into the pricing model. I'm saying keep having a strategic approach to how you show up. So it's bringing it full circle back to where we started in terms of the importance of marketing to law firms. And marketing, and some people sometimes lose track of this, but marketing is about keeping close to clients. It's about understanding clients' wants and needs, and then looking at your business model and saying, what will work for us? So I'm not saying that they can keep doing what they're doing. I'm saying they do need to change. They do need to strategize. They do need to think about what they are going to do to continue to be the business they want to be, but to align their business, their goals with what clients are saying is important to them, and be there for their clients in the ways their clients want them to be there.
Well, that's all we've got time for. It's been great to have you on the podcast, Claire. Thank you very much indeed for joining.
Thank you, David, for the opportunity to speak to you and your podcast followers. I'd urge people to grab a copy of the report. The summary report is 20 odd pages long. We've got a lot of data and conclusions in there and some thoughts about what they can do. And if nothing else, it informs you and gives you information that you can share in your firm. We do have some of this data broken down by different practice types, so residential property clients versus family versus corporate commercial and so on. Use the data. That's why we do it, to enable people to be better informed, to look after their clients. And for me, the three biggest things that stand out are in the areas of that growing generation gap, the importance of sustainability and the importance of first impressions. It's one thing I do need to mention, David, and it's very remiss of me not to have mentioned it right at the outset, and that is to thank our sponsors for this research, which is Moneypenny. They make it possible for us to do this research each year, so a big thank you to them.
Fab. Well, thanks very much indeed for joining the podcast, Claire, and for sharing your insight. The Today's Family Lawyer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysfamilylawyer.co.uk. My thanks to Claire. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
You're listening to the Today's Family Lawyer podcast, the leading source of daily news and insight for family law practitioners in England and Wales. Sign up to our free weekly newsletter at todaysfamilylawyer.co.uk and subscribe to hear all the latest news and views from across the family law sector. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.